From Olympic gold twice to undisputed dominance, a super fight in Britain, and history across weight classes, Claressa Shields has built a resume no woman can match. So the question is not greatness, but whether the GOAT debate is over. Let's talk about it. So I was thinking to myself, where do we start? Where do we start with the greatness of Claressa Shields? So I think the best place to start is a timeline. So in 2012, Claressa Shields wins the gold medal in London at the age of 17. In 2016, she wins another gold medal. Fantastic achievements. In 2017, she turns professional. And in the same year, 2017, she wins the first world title. In 2018, she becomes undisputed at middleweight. In January, I think it was 2021, she wins the titles at 154 pounds. In 2022, Claressa Shields wins the absolute mega fight with Savannah Marshall. And from 2023 to 2024, she wins the title at heavyweight and becomes 5-weight world champion. So when you consider that timeline, here is a statement that I have. No female boxer has the credentials of Claressa Shields. And the only other female boxer to have won 2 gold medals, the only other female boxer to do that is Nicola Adams. But when you put together the amateur pedigree, and you put together the professional pedigree, and you put together the CV, Claressa Shields' CV is simply outstanding. So when I was writing this, I was initially thinking of the greatest female boxers of all time from a professional context. And mostly when we talk about the greats, whether it's in female boxing or male boxing, we're talking about the professional context. But as I went deeper down this rabbit hole, it made me think, is Claressa Shields the greatest female amateur boxer of all time? So this creates a framework. 2 claims here. Claressa Shields may be the greatest amateur boxer of all time, as well as being the greatest professional female boxer of all time. And the rationale is simple. 2 times Olympic gold medalist from 2012 to 2016. And that leads into the segue of why. Why is the Olympic boxing so special? And the short answer to this is very simple. The Olympics is the toughest amateur tournament to win. What does that mean? It means you face the best fighters from every continent. So it's not the best fighters from Europe, not the best fighters from only the USA. It's the best fighters from every continent. And there's no easy paths in the boxing Olympics. So effectively you have elite competition, absolute elite competition from day one. And ultimately, when you think about the Olympics, it's what it represents. What does it represent? It represents beating the world, no political decisions, and it's for the country, not for the money. So it has that prestigious feel, that rarity in a capitalist society where you do something for the passion and for the country as opposed to the money. And also remember that the Olympics has scarcity, and scarcity creates value. Scarcity has a relationship with value. And, the Olympics is once every 4 years. That means it's a unique competition, similar to the Football World Cup. So with Claressa Shields, even from the amateur days and her amateur pedigree, the foundation of her career, even from the amateur past, is so fundamentally strong. So when we talk about Claressa Shields from an amateur perspective, it is a fantastic record. She was the first American boxer, whether male or female, to win back-to-back Olympic golds. Absolutely fantastic achievement. And again, as I've stated, the only contender to this was Nicola Adams, who also had 2 gold medals. And she had a huge impact in the UK. Obviously, the difference between Nicola and Claressa Shields, or one of the most significant difference, is that at the professional level, Claressa Shields also had an absolutely amazing impact. As a side note, unfortunately for Nicola, she retired due to an eye injury which cut her career short only after 6 fights. So from an amateur perspective, or from an amateur pedigree perspective, there's only very few fighters that come even close to Claressa. I think if you was to have a list of the 3 best female amateur boxers of all time, and remember, a lot of this is subjective, you would put number 1, Claressa Shields, number 2, Katie Taylor, and number 3, Nicola Adams. Now, here's another important question, and let's just briefly answer it. What does it mean to be successful in the Olympics? What does it mean? As we've established, the Olympics has a credible platform. It has a very credible platform due to competition and due to the scarcity of the event. And I would say, ultimately, that this successful amateur experience gives you opportunity, and ultimately gives you a massive form of credibility. So let's talk about that first title fight for Claressa Shields. And let's remember, she turned professional, and the same year she had a title fight. Now, in this fight, she had Mark Breland was the trainer, I believe. Currently it's a different trainer. Currently it's John David Jackson, but both of them are very credible trainers. And this title fight was against Nikki Adler. And she was the WBC and IBF super middleweight champion. Now, side note, I'm pretty sure at the time when I was watching the fight that she walked in with Cyborg, the MMA champion at the time, and Claressa Shields walked in with her, and it actually was her. I for some reason I found that quite surprising. Anyway, let's talk about the fight. In this version of Claressa Shields, she was punching straight, fast, so she was punching, throwing the 1-1-2 and then the 2-3-2. For those that don't know, 1-1 is the jab, so 1-1-2, 2 is a straight right, so 2-3-2, straight right, left hook, straight right. Everything was mainly down the middle, and at the beginning of this fight, Claressa was dominating from her back foot. She wasn't putting on pressure, she was just moving around the ring, controlling the tempo. Nikki had a high guard, but she wasn't really using effective foot movement with regards to pressure or the step back, and there was no counter punching, no effective jabs, etc. Claressa was really punching in high volumes in this fight. She would just, throw multiple punches, very impressive, but it was mainly straight punches down the middle. From round 5, Claressa transitions from the back foot to the front foot to dominating and taking the center of the ring. And I remember she throwed what you call a 2-3, which is like a straight right and a left hook. And it was almost like the straight right was thrown not with massive force, but it just set up the left hook because she really put some force behind that punch. And Nikki was in a lot of trouble, and then there was a follow-up of punches, and this encouraged the referee to stop the fight. This was a truly dominant performance, and you could kind of see the technical difference. Respectfully, you could see the technical difference between Claressa Shields and Nikki Adler. So now we're going to fast forward to 2022. But before we do, it's important to ask the question, what was Claressa Shields doing within that time period? Because you got to 2017 to 2022. And as you would expect from this elite talent, she'd just been winning. And the 2 major achievements was the 2018 undisputed middleweight title. And then in 2021, she wins the 154-pound title. So she's just been winning consecutively and just beating the competition, similar to how she did in the amateurs. So at this point of time, in 2022, Claressa Shields is considered a female boxing great, a legend. She had achieved greatness in the amateur world and greatness in the professional world. And then in 2022 came the super fight with Savannah Marshall. And this was huge for female boxing in terms of cultural impact. But the question is, and it's an important question to ask, why did Claressa go to Britain? Surely she would have been the A side considering her achievements. Why did she take that risk? Because that risk was substantial. From a technical point of view, Claressa Shields was part of the female boxing algorithm. But the UK, this is an important point to mention, the UK have a strong financial market. Also, there is a narrative, and there was a compelling narrative. Savannah had a victory over Claressa Shields in the amateurs. So here were the benefits, because when you think about it, you think, okay, what are the benefits of Claressa Shields taking this risk, considering how big of a fighter she is? So to contextualize the benefits, she'll be part of the female boxing British algorithm. So that's something to consider. There's more marketability in the UK within the female boxing context. There'll be a bigger venue than what you could command in America. And then you had this British anchor, this narrative bias, and you had a bigger commercial market, which means that there's more money to be made. But there was significant danger here. There was significant danger. No home advantage, an absolute hostile crowd, and maximum intense pressure. Absolute maximum intense pressure. This was a real risk. Additional to this, Savannah Marshall was really good at marketing. She was really good at marketing and selling the fight. And Boxer and Sky Sports, they were the platform or the platforms that were fueling the marketing fire. And like I said, there was some important context, really important context here. Savannah Marshall had a victory over Claressa in the amateurs. And additional to this, she had a really good trainer, Peter Fury. For reference point, Peter Fury was the head trainer for Tyson Fury against Vladimir Klitschko. Yes, the Vladimir Klitschko that reigned, was it for 9 years as undisputed heavyweight champion? So he was in that corner. So what did that mean? It meant that Peter knows how to put together a great strategy, and he knows how to create an optimum boxing environment. So when you put a good fighter with a strong team, a really good head coach, and you have home advantage, you're winning the amateurs, that's a deadly combination. That's kind of like a deadly weapon. Also, Marshall was considered the bigger puncher, and she had a height and she had a reach advantage. So there was really so many things that were stacked up against Claressa Shields, and you've got to give her a lot of credit for taking this risk. And in the press conferences, you could see that Marshall was really irritating Claressa. She was really irritating her. The body language doesn't lie. It wasn't intimidation. It was irritation. And you could just see that Claressa was noticeably irritated. You know, Savannah Marshall tried to portray the narrative, and she was quite clear in portraying this narrative, that Claressa was deeply hurt by the loss. She was setting that narrative bias in a very efficient way. Savannah Marshall is a very straight talker. And also what Marshall was stating was that, you know, the reason why Claressa has had to come to fight her in the UK is because Claressa doesn't sell tickets, because she's not marketable in America. So she was trying to plant seeds, and she was trying to get a psychological advantage. And clearly both of these boxers were trying to market the fight. But the point is this: the hostility and the real history of both fighters, I believe, sold the fight effectively. So let's talk about the Savannah fight. And in round one, you know, Savannah Marshall had a dominant position and Claressa Shields was moving off the back foot. But let's remember, she's comfortable of moving on the back foot. Now, what was significant for me in round one was that Claressa Shields was really throwing a lot of flurries. And those flurries are really effective because it can steal the round. So if the fight goes the distance, the flurries could be the difference between losing a round and winning a round. What was interesting as well, when she was doing the flurries, she would actually turn southpaw, and this would deliver a different angle, particularly for the left and the right hand. So there was a little subtle nuance there that they clearly had worked on in the gym. In round two, you had the same thing. You had the flurries, and then you had those flurries delivered from the southpaw stance. So that southpaw stance was the technical nuance. In round three, Marshall, you know, had a moment where she had Shields in the corner, but was unable to take advantage. The one thing I noticed here, when she had Claressa Shields on the ropes, she was punching at the target with short punches. Now, I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do, because it's good to, you know, have a good work rate. But I feel that when someone's on the ropes, this is an opportunity for you to punch through the target, because it optimizes your opportunity to maximize your power, score a knockdown, or even perhaps score a knockout. So I felt like throwing the short punches was good, but she should have mixed that with punching through the target as well. And in round 4, Claressa started introducing that right uppercut to the body. It's like a counter shot. And she was also trying to slip the jab and throw the big left hook. So there were some little nuances there. I remember, I think it was round 5 or round 6, that they both exchanged left hooks. They both landed. And that was significant because obviously Marshall was seen as the puncher. So Claressa Shields took the punch, and equally, Savannah Marshall took Claressa Shields' punches as well. Again in round 7, and this fight was like 2 halves. In the second half of the fight, Savannah Marshall started to come on. I remember she threw like a left hook to the head, a left hook to the body. Nice combination. And she was putting on, pressure, throwing, those short punches and throwing a lot of punches. But the difference was that every time Claressa was throwing punches, it was impressive. And she was throwing with maximum impact or more impact. And it was just, I guess the way I looked at the fight was that from a visual perspective, Claressa Shields' work was just visually looked more spectacular. And this for me, even though parts of the fight was competitive, this for me, from my perspective, was a clear victory for Claressa. And to me, the question is, what did Savannah Marshall need to do to win the fight? Well, from my perspective, from an outsider looking in, she needed to engage in the jab battle and win the jab battle, but she didn't. She also needed to put Claressa Shields on the ropes, but then hurt Claressa Shields when she's on the ropes and take advantage. And again, I don't think she took that opportunity. She did the first part of it, getting her on the ropes, but she didn't execute effectively. And also, she didn't control the distance of the fight. That outside range was really important to pick up points, as well as the inside range. And let's not get it confused. She was competitive, but I felt that Claressa Shields was the clear winner. And then the question becomes, what did this victory mean for Claressa Shields? Well, this was, to me, a cultural victory. It was a cultural victory for Claressa Shields. This put her in the British female boxing algorithm. It really did. She came to the enemy's backyard. So she came to the backyard, which was Britain, and she won a decision, and she won it decisively. But it's important to give credit where credit's due. And both female boxers made a significant statement for female boxing. They sold out the O2. They brought light, a tremendous light to female boxing. They had a tremendous marketing campaign. And Savannah Marshall was a very worthy opponent. She was a significant opponent. And in fairness to Savannah Marshall, she graciously said that Claressa Shields was the GWOAT. And for those that don't know, that's an acronym for the greatest woman of all time, which refers specifically to being the greatest female boxer of all time. So the story of Claressa Shields has many chapters and many victories. But the story doesn't just end there. She still has more victories. She's campaigning at heavyweight and she's continuing to make history. She is deeply in the DAZN ecosystem. She has a clear hip-hop affiliation, and in boxing, remember, there's a small time frame, a very small time frame to capitalize on your financial leverage. So I'm assuming with all of her accomplishments, with all of her credibility, it's about maximizing cultural relevance and maximizing financial opportunity. And I asked myself the question, are there any other fights that can further solidify the legacy? And who are those fights? Let's make a little bit of a transition. Now, everyone, or most boxing experts, or people that are passionate about boxing, everyone may have a different top 5 when it comes to female boxers. But they'll be the same similar type of names. We're talking Katie Taylor, Cecilia Ann Wolf, Amanda Serrano, Lucia Riker, etc. So you'll have those names in there, but you might have them in different positions. I feel personally that Lucian Riker was such a significant female boxer, undefeated, avoided by many, and a feared puncher. And of course you had Ann Wolf, one of the most devastating punchers in female history. And then you had Christy Martin. You can't forget about Christy Martin. She had explosive power, and of course she had that amazing exposure on the Evander Holyfield Mike Tyson fight, their first fight. I believe if Christy Martin was in her prime today, she would be so marketable with her power that, she would get tremendous exposure and make tremendous amounts of money. And of course, there are other names like Holly Holmes, Layla Ali, and they deserve an honorable mention because they've contributed significantly to the sport. But in terms of resume, in terms of achievements, in terms of operating at an elite level, you have to put Claressa Shields, I think, as number one. I think most people, or the majority of people, have Claressa Shields as the greatest female boxer of all time. It's very important to remember that a lot of things in life are subjective and rarely objective. For example, in male boxing, when we talk about the number one fighters, many have different people in their number one or their top 10. And there's so many great fighters, whether it's Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Roy Jones, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Pernell Whitaker, Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, etc., etc., etc. And of course, there are subjective arguments, and a lot of these arguments can be linked with our personal experiences of watching these fighters or watching these boxers. However, considering this, Claressa Shields, I believe, is seen as the best female boxer of all time. And that case is compelling and is absolutely convincing. So that's the end of the video. Now I am trying to build a digital boxing community. And that means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then click here or click here. As always, thank you for your time. It is much appreciated. Peace.